am Breanne Harris, and I'm with Pearson TalentLens. If you've heard of Pearson, we're a huge publishing organization, and TalentLens is a teeny tiny division within the big organization, and our focus is on workforce development. So over the past 50 or so years, we've had an assessment called the Watson-Glaser Critical Thinking Appraisal Assessment, and it's widely regarded in the industry as one of the best assessments for critical thinking training. And as we've been using that assessment for selection, our customers came back to us and they said, that's great, we love it for selection, but what do we do to develop our employees? And the research behind what's going on supports that as well. What we found out is that individuals who are recently graduating from high school and from college aren't coming out with the critical thinking skills that we expect them to. In fact, 0% of the managers that we've surveyed believe that the recent high school graduates are excellent in critical thinking. Right. And even more sad than that, the high school graduates were only rated as 28%, were rated as excellent in critical thinking. So there's a huge deficit right now in the critical thinking skills. And it's up to the employers, unfortunately, and in some cases, to take up the slack there and improve upon the critical thinking skills of their employees. These individuals are making multi-million-dollar decisions in your organization every single day. So if we have to train them and they're not getting it in college, it has to be done. Let's see here. Additionally, in addition to the fact that they're not coming out with those skills, throughout our surveys, we found that employers are rating critical thinking as the skill of most important or most increasing importance over the past few years. In fact, we've run this survey 3 years consecutively, and it's consistently come out as the #1 skill of increasing importance in organizations, which isn't really surprising given the greater focus on critical thinking right now, especially in education as well as nursing, for example. It's a big mandate within that field that critical thinking must be increased. So we knew that there's a big gap. So we came out with a few different training programs at Pearson related to critical thinking. But we're also trainers. We've also been in the industry for a long time. And I'm sure that you all know when you tell your managers or your customers, we have a 2-day program, what do they say? Can you make it 1 day? Right? And then if you say, okay, we have a 1-day program, they say, okay, but can you make it 4 hours? Okay. And then if you make it 4 hours, then they say, okay, can you make it a 1-hour webcast? Okay. Right. We know that. And so as a result of that and what we know is happening in the marketplace, what we decided to do was come out with an online e-learning platform related to critical thinking. A couple of things that we know about learning in terms of critical thinking is it takes constant reinforcement. Critical thinking is not something that you can go to a short workshop on and come out with incredible critical thinking skills. It requires constant reinforcement and coaching also. Something that's tough is that you can walk into a room and say, how many of you think you're great critical thinkers? Everyone will raise their hands. Everyone believes they're a great critical thinker. The truth is that's not always the case, right? And so we have to face the reality that every person can improve their critical thinking skills, whether you're great, average, or need some improvement. So what we've done is taken our critical thinking approach using the RED model of critical thinking and put it into an online learning program so that it's self-paced, self-directed, available 24/7, and also can be managed by a coach online. So you can get that constant reinforcement and coach that you need when we all know that in organizations we probably don't have the time to coach all of our employees. So let me take you through a few of the features of the critical thinking program so you can see what we did here. The first thing that we did was put a store online. We know that not everyone likes to learn online. It's a unique approach for some people, and it just doesn't match. So what we wanted to do is provide as many resources as possible in as many forms as possible. So the first thing we have is the store, where you can click on any of these links and purchase books related to decision-making, problem-solving, creative thinking, etc., and read those in your own time. And then also we provide one book for free for all individuals who've purchased the Critical Thinking University. And they can download this to their Nook e-reader and read it on their own time. And then we also have a book club that goes along with that, so you can learn a little bit more and interact with other people in the community. So let's go into the meat, the heart of the critical thinking training program. We have 18 courses, and each course builds upon the other. And so these courses start out at a really basic level, understanding things like the difference between a fact and opinion, learning how to set criteria for making decisions, learning how to identify bias or persuasion techniques, as well as being able to use persuasive techniques when necessary to pursue an argument. So let's go through what one of these courses looks like. Each course, there are 18 courses, and each course has several different segments. So let's start with the Look at Your Options tutorial. So the first thing that each user will get in the very first part of the course is your kind of traditional instructor-led part of the course, where we talk about the vocabulary that's necessary, give you a really basic understanding of the topic itself. So in these tutorials that'll pop up here in a second based on the internet, each one takes about 15 to 20 minutes complete. It's the instructor-led version, but there's also interactivity. So it's not the kind of e-learning course where you can just keep hitting next and then take the quiz at the end and hope that you pass. And then if you don't, you have to go back. It's not like that. So we require a lot of interactivity. For example, in one of the tutorials, looks like, oh, there we go. In one of the tutorials, the topic is about setting criteria for making a decision. And we give you the example of you're a hiring manager and you need to hire an individual for this particular role. You're given a description of the job and what the in-person tasks would be. And then you're also given some resumes. And it's your job to decide which would be the best fit for that job, given the criteria you've set based on the job description. So it's a way that we apply the topic of critical thinking. So let's go back to the very first part of the tutorial here. So to give you just an introduction, each one of these relates to a specific topic. This particular one is about identifying and looking at a variety of different alternatives when you're trying to make a decision. So let's say you're trying to decide between different vendors. We have about 1,000 of them here in this room right here. When you're trying to choose between vendors, a non-critical thinking approach would be to walk in and choose the one that feels best to you. Let's say you're looking for an e-learning program. We want it to be have constant support, never go down. We want it to have a community. We want it to have additional links for maybe some social learning. You set those criteria beforehand, and then you go out and evaluate whether or not each of the learning providers provide a match for that criteria. So that would be a critical thinking approach. And those are the kinds of things that we talk about in the first part of these tutorials. So after you've gone through the course-led, the kind of traditional instructor-led part of the course, then let's go on to the next activity, which is always some kind of an application of what we've just learned. So we always apply it to an actual business that's had a real-life example of what we've just talked about. So in this example, the business that we talk about is FedEx. Is anyone here from FedEx? No, it's not a bad example. I'm just kidding. So each one of these gives an example of an organization that's gone through a similar situation. We would be able to pull up the video here and watch that. It's usually an analyst from the Financial Times that's explaining how they dealt with some business difficulties and how they approached the decisions that they were faced with. Then when you're finished with that, in the next activity, you actually apply what you just learned to the situation you just saw. So in this example, this is a discussion forum approach. Sometimes we have more like journal entries. Kind of depends on the topic. So in this one, we are looking at the FedEx wage cuts and the really difficult decisions that they had to make to keep their business afloat. The first question is that due to the economic downturn, FedEx had to make some difficult changes in order to reduce the cost and avoid slashing in the workplace. What are some steps they took? What are some pros and cons of the approach? So you get an opportunity to think about that for yourself. Now, had I not already answered this question using my account, all of these responses below would be hidden until you post your response. And the reason why we did that is we realized that 2 or 3 years down the line, somebody may sign up for a new license to the Critical Thinking University, come online, see this discussion board, and see 325 responses. And then you have that feeling like, can I add anything to this discussion? I mean, it's been rehashed a million times over. What we wanted to give is everyone the opportunity to have that first aha moment, to have the opportunity to contribute to the conversation without feeling like it's already been there, done that. And then once you post a response, all the other responses would be visible, so then you can interact with other people as well. In the next part of this course, we have a journal reflection section. So in this section of each course, we take the topic that we just learned about, and then we apply it to your business situation. So, looking at a situation that, let's see, The question is, describe how you could be a more effective decision maker by using systematic approach to organizing data, weighing alternatives, and drawing conclusions, for example. So you would talk through, if you were in an instructor-led course, this is would kind of be the breakout moment where everybody breaks out into different groups. And you think about how you could incorporate this into your own life and then report out to the group. This is how we've kind of synthesized that in an online version. Now, our community managers are constantly behind the scenes, and they're watching things that come through and looking for opportunities to coach more critical thinking out of each individual. So if they see something that comes through that says, I don't need to be a better systematic decision maker, I am the best decision maker that there ever has been, then they're going to respond back and say, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's dig a little bit deeper. And so they'll be your online coach to facilitate that conversation. So then in the next activity, it's actually the last activity of this course, is another discussion forum. And this one goes back to the core concepts of critical thinking. So back to the topic of just looking at your options in general. And so as you can see here, I've not contributed to this discussion using my account, and so this response is hidden. So the first question is, how do you deal with missing or conflicting information? So the individual could reply to that and then see the sample response that's already been given by our community managers. And then with that, that takes you into the next course, which is, are you being logical? So that's what the coursework looks like, but there's a lot more to it. If you hand somebody 18 courses, it's not always very exciting. We know that. What's exciting is a community. What's exciting is when you get to engage with a lot of people. So in this red section of the Breanne and the training section, we also provide plenty of opportunities for discussions. And one of those is in our topic of the week. So each week, our community managers put out a new topic that's something hot happening in the news. For instance, this one is about Gen Y workers. Who isn't talking about Gen Y workers, right? And so this particular topic is all about, what is it about Gen Y workers and the conflict between different generations in the workplace, and how can we come to a better ability to interact with one another? And the discussion board obviously is listed here below. And you can see each time an individual replies, our community managers, either Anne or Charlie Kreitzberg, respond and try to coach out additional critical thinking from those comments. For instance, in this particular discussion board, I remember that we got a little bit off track, and the community managers bring it back on track to the topic at hand. So let's take a step back and go to some other areas of the community here. Now, I mentioned before that we have a free book that's included with the Critical Thinking University, and that's the Now You're Thinking book. So if you've been over to booth 1134, we're actually giving out free copies of the book in the booth, and the authors are there to sign the books as well. The book itself, the first half of the book, is a true story of a Marine battalion that saved the life of a 2-year-old Iraqi girl in the hotbed of terrorism happening in Iraq at the time, and they did so through really effective critical thinking. The second half of the book details out how they were able to do that based on the RED model of critical thinking, which is a model of critical thinking that we've validated over the years. And then also there's a personality type component to it that you can think of. It's actually called the My Thinking Styles Assessment. There are 7 different thinking styles. And so the book details out the way that all the individuals have contributed to saving the life of this little girl, Amina, because of the strengths of their thinking styles. So an individual that's timely, for example, is constantly making sure that the papers were submitted to the Department of Homeland Security to get the passports to get Amina out of Iraq into the United States to have her surgery. And so the book details that out, and what's really interesting is that it details out the thinking styles using a character approach. So the people you've already grown to love in the first half of the book, now you have a name to attach to a thinking style. So when you think about timely, you think about Colonel Bellin and his role in saving Amina. So we had a lot of customers come back to us after we published this book and said, this is great, this is the best kind of starting conversation for talking about critical thinking in our organization. Now what do we do with it? And so we said, well, what about a book club? So a lot of our customers are now implementing book clubs in our organization. What better place to put this online? So you can see here we have posted the questions, and individuals can come back on and interact with the book club. The next section here is the idea exchange. So under the idea exchange, we've already covered 2 of the areas, the discussion forum courses, the discussion forums within the courses, and also the topic of the week. But we also have a wiki that is online, so individuals can contribute to the conversations, add comments, and collaborate with one another to talk about critical thinking, whether it's about something that's a topic in your own organization or just critical thinking in general.
And then also, we have a link to our experts' blogs. So some people are really excited about blog posts, and it's a great way to constantly keep up to date with new information. I actually write one of the blog posts that are contributed that is used to contribute to the Critical Thinking University. So I'm a big fan, obviously. I mean, you can't get better content than what I write, obviously. So let's go to the Experts Corner, and you can see a little bit more of that. There are 5 different sections of the Experts Corner. The first of which is the Think Watson's Corner. Think Watson is actually our marketing website, but we have a ton of resources on there that are really useful for just the everyday individual. We have some really fun infographics on here, such as the best critical thinkers in modern history, which is taking a little while to pull up, so we'll go back. But also some case studies, some white papers, and things like that related to critical thinking. The second section is Anne and Charlie's Corner. Anne and Charlie Kreitzberg are the community managers behind the Critical Thinking University. So they're the coaches behind the scenes that are doing all the work to make sure that we're improving individuals' critical thinking skills. In addition to that, they've been doing training on critical thinking for a number of years and have written their own blog posts and articles on the topic. So we've indexed those here. Next, we have Ben's Corner. And Ben Paris is actually an employee of Pearson Education. He writes a lot of the test prep content for organizations like Kaplan, for example. A lot of the course content for the LSAT and the GMAT. And so he's written a lot of articles as well. A lot of these are actually critical thinking challenges. And the tough thing about critical thinking is
that it's been done and done and done by academia, and it's boring, right? So we had to make it fun. We had to apply it to the business place to make it interesting. So as an example here, Ben wrote a critical thinking challenge about the All-American Burger. And so this is at a time when all fast food restaurants are coming out with salads and smoothies and apples instead of French fries. So that was the trend everyone was going towards. But one fast food restaurant decided to go completely the opposite way and said, you know, no salads for us. We're going to have like the bacon on bacon with cheese in the middle and like throw some fried chicken in the middle, that kind of a burger. And so what kind of a thought process did it take to come to that decision? And what criteria or what information did they have to support the fact that that would still be successful? And it was. So it's a real life application of the topic in a fun way. Let's take a step back here. The second to last section here is the Critical Thinkers blog, which I co-author. So we have about 350 blog posts here. The topics range from everything from things that are happening in the news to the red model of critical thinking, how to apply it in your everyday life. And then finally, we have just a listing of every critical thinking article or decision-making, problem-solving, creative thinking article that we found in the past few months. And it's constantly updated. There are about 600 links that we have in here. So you really can't run out of things to read, I don't think. So at the end of the Critical Thinking University, if you've passed all the courses, you get a big certificate and a pat on the back from us for finishing the Critical Thinking course. But that's not all. Then you get the really exciting moment of taking the Critical Thinking Challenge, which is a 2D game. And who remembers the game Clue? You have to figure out who did it, where did they do it, what instrument did they use. Okay, think about this as a modern day version or an online version of the game Clue. So you're given a situation where you are an investigator or a detective, and you've been told that there was a painting that was stolen on the Red Royale. You have to solve the mystery. We'll skip this and jump in. Once you get on the boat, you jump into one room, and you're given the opportunity to interview the individuals in each room, as well as investigate all of the items in the room as well. So as you can see with this animation, we're getting a phone call from our boss, so we probably should answer with the boss. Answer the call. Then they give us a little bit of narration, so it sets the scene that we have a painting that was stolen, and let's just respond back randomly here, because that forces us through the conversation the first time, but now we have the opportunity to investigate. So let's click on our first suspect here and ask him some questions. So can you tell me where the theft took place? Let's see here. He says it happened in the salon. It's down the hall. So let's ask the next question. So as you can see, we kind of go through the first step, and we're gathering some information, just like any good detective would. Then once we're finished with that, we're going to want to look at the room. And we can see we can inspect the bed tray as well as the suitcase. So let's see what the bed tray, what's up with the bed tray. See, there are no crumbs on there. I guess the host didn't lose his appetite. So it kind of leads you down a path of thinking, you know, oh, gosh, he didn't lose his appetite. Now, whether or not that's important is a different story. Let's look at the briefcase. Let's see here. We assume that it's the host's briefcase. It's currently unlocked and empty. I wonder what he keeps in there. Once we're finished with this room, we can head out to the main boat and then head on to the next room, which is the salon. And we think that's where the host's painting was stolen. And as you can see in this room, we don't have any individuals to interview, but we do have items to investigate. So you continue down this path, and after you've gone through all of the different rooms of the boat, then you have the opportunity to go back and re-interview, because perhaps what the engineer tells you may cause another question to pop in your mind to go back and ask the director of the boat, for example. Once you're finished going through all of the rooms of the boat, these handcuffs here will highlight, and you'll have the opportunity to make a determination. Who stole the painting, where was it stolen, and what item was used? And if you're wrong, you got to keep working on it. So you go back and re-interview individuals as well. And just like any good detective, you have your notebook, so you can keep notes along the way. You can save and come back later. But these are the suspects that you'll decide who was responsible, the rooms, and also the tools. And then after you're finished, a good critical thinker typically takes about an hour to go through the game and then make the determination. If you don't get it right the first time, you have to keep on going back through and gathering more information. So that's the fun finale to the Critical Thinking University. So as you can see, what we did with the Critical Thinking University is we know that individuals, we don't have a lot of time to take a course. They don't have a lot of time to be in a classroom setting. So we put it online and put it in bite-sized pieces so you can take a bit here, take a bit there. We typically say that if you take about an hour a week, then you can improve your critical thinking skills over the course of a year, which is the length of our critical thinking licenses. There's a CTU pre-test and a post-test also, so we can measure the amount of information that you were able to learn across over the year. And so that's a Critical Thinking University and how we train critical thinking in the 21st century. Any questions?